what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my little channel here. Today I want to get started on a different project on my truck. For those of you who watched the last one, I got the Ranger here. Finally got that reassembled. I rebuilt the engine on it after I spun a rod bearing on Power Tour last year. So the engine's in there now. Got it fired up on the last video. Everything seems to be going good on it. But today I want to try and get tackle my fuel cell. I've been wanting to rebuild the fuel cell in here or make a custom one. So I'm going to get started on that. Originally, when I had the old school 302 in here, I just had bought a fuel cell and I mounted it up underneath where the spare tire was, kind of back here, just behind the rear axle here. So I want to kind of customize that. I want to redo, I had built kind of a cage around it. I'll show you that. Around the fuel cell to kind of protect it and mount it. You can see it from the back. It kind of would hang down below the bumper a little bit because I have a roll pan on there now. And you can kind of see it sticking down. So I wanted to get that up a little bit. And I think once I move, get rid of that cage that I built around it, I'll be able to go wider and bring it up a little bit and kind of hide that some more. And at the same time, I'll get about 5 more gallons in it. So that'll be a good thing. But I already got kind of some of the fuel drained out of here. So it's a little easier to move that around and just drop that tank. But this is the new one here. It's just kind of mocking this up a little bit. But this is the size of the new one here. I was hoping they were going to be able to, the metal shop that I had this bend for me, I was hoping they were going to could get to 4 sides on here, but because of the depth of it, their machine couldn't, it would hit, if they were bending this corner, it would hit on this side when it would fold it. So this is kind of what we worked out that best to do is just make it like this. And then I just got to weld my panels on the side. I was hoping to do the least amount of welding possible. That's why I wanted to have them bend all 4. So I'll have to kind of put both sides on here, and then that's the top plate there. And basically, it's just the way it is. So we'll have to do some TIG welding to get that all put back together. But basically, it shouldn't be too hard doing all that. I will have to get the top kind of cut. What I plan on doing is getting the sides on here, so just the top is the last thing to go on. And then I'll have to stick this up underneath the truck and figure out where my filler is going to be. Right now I got this style filler. Once I get it kind of mounted in where I think it's going to go, then I can kind of mark out where that's going to be. And then I'll dictate where my pump will go and my kind of return and my vent, I should say, and also my gauge. So once that's there, then I can kind of move the gauge and all that other stuff out of the way. But what I plan on doing is basically getting that, like I said, the 4 sides on it. And then I can kind of somewhat tack that on there and get that marked out. And then I'll be able to figure out where I want to have some sort of sump, so to speak, in here. So the Retrofit kit that I bought from Holley, and I'll show it to you quick here. It's just their in-tank Retrofit kit that basically bolts on, and you can set the depth to it, whatever depth you need. So it's got the return inlet outlet, I should say, and the vent on it. So that's real nice. I think that'll work great. And then I'll probably put a little bung on here on the tank for a drain if I want to. And then I also got this new fuel cap for it. Kind of got this off of Amazon. It'll work way better. This has just got a nice aluminum cap to it, but it's just a kind of a quick, you push down on it. See if I can hold it. Oh, come on. Oh, I gotta have it up in the air. There we go. It's got kind of a spring loaded, you push it down, turn it, and then it pops up, and it locks in there real nice. I think that'll work way easier. This one here, I liked it, but one of the issues I always had is over time, this cap spreads apart. This plastic here, so it's supposed to go in there, and then when you turn this top piece here, or the lever, the black plastic here will spin and come to the side, and then it comes underneath it, and it locks in place. Well, over time, that plastic starts to spread a little bit. So what I've actually had to do is it kind of on the edges here, I've shaved this or angled this down a little bit on both sides, because once it goes in there and it spreads out, then you can't get the damn cap back out, and it's a pain in the ass trying to mess around with it and fudge it out when you're trying to put gas in it. So I kind of got sick of that, and I was looking for a little bit better cap to go on there. So I think that other one over there will work better than this. But this one did all right, but it's just, yeah, it becomes tight. And I actually had to sand that down or grind that down just a couple times the while that it was in the tank. So, all right, I've got the old tank out here. You can kind of see I got this cage built around it. This is all made out of stainless. I think it's 1-inch stainless. I forget how thick it was. But my main idea behind it was just in a rear impact that it's protecting that tank. But I mean, honestly, if I get hit in the rear ended on this truck, it's probably gonna damage it or blow up anyway. So I don't necessarily have to be this robust or heavy, I guess. So even with this tank being aluminum and just about empty here, this whole thing is still fairly heavy. But anyway, we're gonna get rid of this. This will give me more clearance to move out and yet come up if I get rid of this cage and just have the fuel cell there. These are the brackets I kind of had mounting the whole thing and hanging the tank in there. The idea or the plan is to hopefully reuse these same mounting holes on the frame rather than having to drill new ones or make new brackets. I'm not going to reuse these themselves. They'll just come off of the tank itself. But you can see that I got the pump up here. This is a Deutschwerks or Deutschwerks pump. I think it's a 340, 350, I think. So, and then I got my Holley filters. This is a 100 micron. Being that there's no sock inside like on a normal fuel pump or intake fuel pump, I got my 100 micron filter here and then my 10 micron filter here. I had it as low as possible, and just so it's not hurting the pump, because the higher the pump is and it's trying to suck it out, it shortens the life of the pump basically. So you almost want the gravity feed to the pump, and then the pump can push it forward. So that's why I have as low as I have it. And it worked fine, but once you start driving and going on long trips, this thing got pretty noisy. Even with it rubber mounted and everything, you just hear it whining. So I won't be reusing this, the 100 micron, because I'll have a sock on the in-tank pump. So we'll save this for something else. We'll save the pump for some other project probably. But I'll reuse this 10 micron, and I'm not quite sure where I'm going to put it yet. If I'm going to mount it in the frame or where I'm going to mount it, but we'll figure out a spot for it. So, but yeah, you can see, being that the pump is here, now I got to find a spot for it up here somewhere. Not this one, but the new one. So the new tank, the filler is probably going to be close to the center here, the way it looks, because the new tank will be, a little bit wider, a little bit longer, I guess. So we'll have to find a spot. We'll have to mark this first, figure out where that's going to go, and then we can figure out where the fuel sender is going to fit, so it's not hitting anything when it swings through its motion, and then also find a place for the pump. The thing with the pump is I want to build some sort of baffling on the inside, kind of a square baffling. So when the pump goes down into the tank, I want to build a square baffle around it. If there's a round pump like that, there's going to be a square baffling around it. So on hard accelerations, forward or reverse or side to side, I want fuel to stay in there so it doesn't, cavitate the pump or some reason go lean or something like that. So we'll build some sort of baffling around there, to keep it from fuel sloshing around and stuff. But that all has to fit and be able not to hit, so the fuel sender doesn't hit it, so the pump keeps fuel in there. So we'll get that figured out with the new tank, but yeah, I'm gonna try and reuse as many parts off of this one as I can for the new one, but a lot of this we're not gonna need, so, but we can kind of start mocking up the new tank and get that thing maybe tack welded in place. All right, I figured now would be the best time to kind of test to see or check the depths of everything, like the fuel pump assembly here, to make sure that I can visually see that it's clearing and I got the right depth here. Pretty much got this thing assembled now. I got to put fittings and stuff on it here, but as far as the pump and the wiring here and the hoses, I have all that adjusted. So it's got a mounting bracket on here that you have to cut to the right depth, depending on the depth of your tank. And also the return hose here, and then the supply hose that's up in here. So you just adjust those according to the depth of your tank. There is a gasket that rides on top here. It's pretty thick. It's maybe 3/8 or a 1/2 inch thick. But once you squish it down, obviously it's going to be thinner. And I don't know how much that'll actually squish. It's pretty thick because it's made to contour any ribbed fuel tanks. But being mine is smooth, and I'm not sure exactly how much that's going to compress. So I just took that out for the time being and I measured it. So it might be up a little bit off the bottom of the tank, but for now it just clears the bottom here. And so this should be ready to go. We'll figure out once this tank is kind of welded up where this is going to be mounted. But as far as the depth, that should be ready to go. And then I also have my fuel sender, which I was testing. This is probably the best way to check this with this all being open like this. This is a Ford fuel sender. I think it's off of like an SN95 Mustang, basically a 94 to 04 Mustang. So the tank is completely different, and I've already modified this thing. Ford runs, at least on this Ranger, they run a kind of an oddball ohm resistance on their fuel senders, which is like 5 to 240 ohm resistance, where a lot of other ones, aftermarket stuff, is 0 to 90 or 90 to 0. So it just depends on what the gauge is reading. So I bought this sender so it works with the gauge, so I didn't have to necessarily put a new gauge, fuel sending gauge, in the truck. But it's already been modified, like I said. Maybe you can see this. Show you here. So this rod actually used to come out this way, and you can maybe kind of see it came out of there and then went to the left and came out that way. I cut it at the end here, and I put it on the other side and I tack welded it, and then I have it tack welded there because I needed it to be shorter. So when I actually, let's put this back on here. So when I put it up on here, there might be a little bit of a thickness for the gasket here, so it might be up just a little bit. It's not going to be much. But right now when I put it in here, it does bottom out on the bottom, and it actually hits on the top too. So it's just barely hitting. There's not a whole lot of extra that it needs to go to clear, but I want a little bit of a gap on the bottom and the top. I just don't want that sitting there rattling on there if it's floating, or on the bottom that might wear eventually. The float might wear or break off or something, who knows. I don't know, maybe it'd be noisy too, but basically I want to make a little more clearance there on top and bottom. I thought maybe if I bent this rod a little bit, I could get that. If I bend it more straight here, I'd be able to clear the bottom. But once it gets to the top, it's going to hit the top more. So what I'm going to have to do is actually shorten this rod. So I'll have to probably cut my tack weld here and shorten it up maybe 1/4 inch, or I don't know if I'll have to go a half, but I'll try maybe 1/4 inch or just a little bit, and re-tack it on there, and then retest it here, and then we should be good to go. So I'll do that next year. We'll shorten this thing up. One thing too is, being this is it's nice that this rod actually comes out of here. It just slides out, so I don't have to worry about, because this thing was sitting in fuel. So if there's any fumes or, you know, residual stuff here, if I'm trying to weld on this thing, it's just going to light up and I don't need to burn this thing. So we'll pop this rod out of here, and we'll shorten it up just a little bit and try it and see if it works. All right, now that my fuel level sender is adjusted correctly, where it won't bottom out either on the top or the bottom, and the fuel pump is adjusted, I went and actually tack welded this thing, the end plates onto it. So now we got somewhat of a box here. I'll fully weld this thing, I think, once we're all done, getting everything figured out where it's all going to go, and the top will go on here, and then I'll just fully weld everything rather than doing it now, just in case. I'm not 100% sure either if I'm going to tack weld the inside and the outside, probably, just for the extra strength and make sure it doesn't leak anywhere. We'll see how well it goes on the outside here, but the top fits pretty good. You can see there's a little bit of a lip. They designed it so it just goes right in between those two lips on each side, so it kind of slides in here. It's a nice, perfect fit. I did have to, they kind of overbent my angles they're a little bit more than a 90, so I did kind of stretch it out a little bit to make it square. So it wasn't too difficult, but we got it tacked together. I'll put the top on here. We'll get it taped on probably, just so it's holding on. I don't want to tack it on there yet. And then what I'm going to do is probably figure out where my brackets are going to be first. I do have, so I have two bolt holes that were holding it here and here on each side. You can kind of see this one here and here. I'd like to reuse those two. I might add a third one. This is nice and flat here, so I might be able to just put some angle aluminum, come off of there and then go onto the tank and weld it onto the tank. Ideally that'd be awesome, but I'd prefer to have the brackets on top of the frame rail. So for some reason a bolt would ever break or come loose or something, the tank just doesn't fall. At least it's resting up into here. The only thing is I'm not sure if I'll be able to, because I'd have to get one side up and then get the other side up. I don't know if I'd be able to shimmy it to the left enough and then go back to the right and then set it down in there to be able to use these bolt holes and aluminum L brackets like that, or I should say aluminum angle. So either that, my other idea is just to take some tubing, maybe some big 3-inch square tubing or 3x4 or something like that, and kind of weld it to the side of the tank, but then angle the other side, kind of cut it at a pi, and then that way I can have access to the top of the bolt, and then just bolt it through and just have two, you know, tubing here coming off the tank, and same on the other side. So it's like got two legs on there. I think the angle aluminum would be stronger, just more support rather than two separate tubing coming off of there. But we'll see what happens here. I'll have to get it up in place and see how much room I have first. All right, you can see I got my tank mounted up in here. It's not fully mounted, it's just kind of mocked up right now. I kind of have it hanging here with the straps and stuff. I have it centered best I can, kind of right in the position that I want it to be. Then I could kind of figure out where my brackets, or how I'm going to make my brackets. One thing I wanted to do when I had the tank in here is obviously I want room to be able to get the cover off of the differential. Right now it might, if you ever have to take the gears out, I think there would be enough room to take them out. But currently the weight is on the springs right now, so this is at ride height. And if I didn't have room, all I'd have to do is just put jack stands on the frame rails and let the axle hang down, and then I should have plenty of room. Or I'd have to take the tank down, but I think we're doing okay there. It clears in the back, my receiver hitch, so I don't have issues there. But I got it in position. This was kind of one of my ideas, was kind of an angled bracket, not necessarily this exact size, but something along these lines, where I could come off the tank and be able to access the bolt and still have strength here, and just have a couple tabs, you know, for where the existing bolt holes are. And it might be strong enough to do that. One good thing is I'd be able to, with just 2 of them, I'd probably be able to get access to my bolts fairly easy, or any wiring that's up in here I can access a little bit better. The only thing I don't like about this is that it's kind of concentrated in those 2 spots on each side, and the weight of the tank is going to ride in those 2 spots, so I don't know over time if that would start to crack or not. So I was kind of not necessarily against that, but I just thinking I'd go a different route. So I was thinking I'd go with some angled iron. Now that it's in here, I can kind of measure how far off the frame my tank is and how far the bracket would have to be. So I measured if this thing is centered, it's about 3.5 inches from the outside of the frame rail on each side to the tank. And so I was hoping to find just some 3.5 aluminum angle, but they don't make it. It's either 3-inch or 4-inch, not 3.5. So I went with 4-inch angled piece here. This is 1/4 inch. I didn't need 1/4 inch, but that's all they had. I don't know if they make anything lighter than that in this size, but 1/4 inch, it'll be fine. If it's a little bit stronger, that's fine too. So I trimmed the one side down to 3.5, and I can kind of get that up in here. There's plenty of surface area for the strength, so it doesn't necessarily flex or start to crack in those 2 little spots with those legs like I showed you before. I think this is a nice cleaner look to it maybe. The only issue that is if I do this, it's going to be hard to access the bolts unless I go one on the ends on each end. I'd like to go more than that, so I'm either going to do 3 or 4 depending on the size of the bolt that I use. And it's just a matter of, okay, how do I access the bolts in the back side? Originally, if I did this route, went with the angle, I wish I could put them kind of take them and set it on the inside of the frame rail so it's resting on the frame, not bolted up to the bottom. The only issue there is how do you get it in there and bolt it up? You'd have to kind of slide one end in and over, and then put the other end in and then center it. And I just don't have the real estate, I guess, to do that. It's either I'm not going to have enough room to get bolts on there, just because it's kind of a thinner frame rail. And so most likely I'll just bolt it up on the outside here, just on the bottom, bolt it up to the bottom. But like I said, there we go. How do I access the bolts on the back side or up inside the frame rail there? I did think about maybe having some studs or something on the top that the bolts just stuck down and I could bolt it up that way. Maybe I still will do that. I'm not sure yet. I could bolt, I could put a strap up in there, weld bolts to it and stick through the holes. That way they're not going to turn because that strap is nice and long, and they won't turn on me. And then I can just run a nut up on the bottom and we'd be good to go. My other idea would be these. These are just a, I don't know, frame clip, I guess you'd call it. Not necessarily a frame clip, but it's got threads on it. So you'd slide it up, over the frame rail and just drill a hole where your hole would be. But I don't know if they're going to be long enough. You need the length here to get to where the bolt actually goes through there. And this frame rail is not perfectly straight on the edge here. It's kind of wavy. It's flat on the bottom side, but on the side of it here, where the edge is, it's wavy. So the one back here might be long enough to fit that clip. The one in the center might not, kind of thing. So I don't think I'm going to go that route. My other idea would be to use a rib nut and just figure out where my holes are going to be, where I want to put them, and then just drill the big hole. And then I can have my rib nuts put in there, and then I can just run a bolt straight up in there, and I don't have to have necessarily that strap with some studs sticking out of it or anything like that. So I might either do the strap with the bolts in it. That might be the easiest. to get on and off kind of thing. The rib nuts aren't that bad either, but over time, sometimes those rib nuts will spin on you and they'll come loose, and then it's kind of, basically you have to cut them out. So I don't know which route I'm going to go. I think it depends on the size of bolts I'm going to use, and yeah, we'll figure that out. But I think we're going to go with the angle iron here, or angle aluminum, I guess you'd call it. And we'll get that tacked on there, and then we can figure out where the bolt holes are going to be. So I'll drop the tank here again, and we'll get these pieces kind of tacked on there and figure that out. All right, I got both mounting brackets welded to the tank. They're fully welded. I decided I was going to go as far as mounting this to the frame instead of the little clips that I was talking about. I decided I was going to go with the strap here. So you can see I got this made up already. This kind of worked out. These straps here were the ones that went over the old tank right there to hold it down into that cradle that I built. So I just figured I'd use it. It's just some 1-inch iron here, some 1-inch strap, but I went with some galvanized bolts that I had. These are carriage bolts, and then I just tack welded them on. I also have holes on the end. The holes were already there. This one I had to drill, I think, shorten it up just a little bit. But what's going to happen is this will be on top on the inside of the frame rail. So the bottom of the frame rail, this will be up inside there. I'll drill holes so this will sit up inside there. I can bolt it to the frame with those two ends so it doesn't move. And then it's just going to sit like that. So the frame rail will be in between there, and then I'll just be able to bolt it up from underneath. So when you look at it underneath, if you ever want to take this on and off, these studs will be sticking through the bottom of the frame. You just got to push the tank up in there, tighten the nuts, and you're good to go. I will probably put some rubber straps or some sort of rubber piece between the frame and the tank here, just to kind of isolate it a little bit. It'll also help with the steel and the aluminum not corroding together, but it'll also kind of give a little bit of wiggle room for the tank if it needs to. So I think that turned out all right. I think it'll work good. So I got this side made up. I got to make one for the other side here. Whoops, sorry. Once both of these are made up, I'll get the tank up into the position that I want it underneath, get it up in there, and then I'll be able to drill my holes here through the frame rail. And then once those are done, then I can fully mount this thing. It won't be ready to mount it because I got to get the top on and all the guts and everything in it. But once I get those holes drilled, then I can kind of set the top on here, figure out where the fill cap is going to be in the center here. I'll have to go look through the top of the bed there. And then once that's figured out, then I can figure out where I'm going to put everything else in here. But so far, I think that'll work. I like that. It should be nice and strong here. And once we get the top and everything in here, there will be some baffling in here, so they'll go from side to side and stuff as much as I have room for it. So that'll strengthen it up a little bit too, but I think that'll work. So we'll get that other side made, and then we'll be able to mount it up underneath there and test it out. So that's what the mounting strap is going to look like. You can see I got four bolts in there welded to this strap. I marked my holes and drilled through the frame, so it's going to sit up there pretty decent. I kind of messed up, and this suspension bolt is right here where this other bolt is, so I kind of have to take this bolt out on both sides just to get the strap in here. But what's in here, then I can get the nut and bolt back in there. Shouldn't have any issues. And this I'm going to have two small, just 1/4-inch bolts holding it to the frame, just so when you're pushing the tank up, it's not pushing up also. This bolt will actually hit back here, but I just figured I'd put a small bolt there and a small bolt there in the end, and then I'll keep that in the frame rail. These studs I'll cut shorter once I figure out how much extra I got hanging out the bottom, but I'm going to get some kind of paint, probably put some Por 15 up in here and on the bottom here, and we should be able to mount the tank up in there. I did, I figured out where I mounted the tank up in there just to figure out where I was going to drill anyway on the frame, where these holes were. But I got the cover on here temporarily. Kind of figured out this is where my fill cap is going to be. The pump is going to go somewhere around here. What I'll end up doing is making short hoses coming off the pump, just because there's not going to be any room on top to get your hands in here to tighten the hoses onto the pump itself, the pump assembly. So I'm going to have to make some small hoses that kind of come off the tank, whatever they're going to, and then I can attach them on the outside where I can actually get to them. So had to try and figure out which way this was going to be turned and which hoses were going where, and I think this is going to work. So it's kind of pointing that way. The return and the supply will go that way. The vent will kind of be going towards the back. I'm going to put my fuel sender right about here, so that'll kind of come up this way. So a lot of the stuff is going to be almost right in the center here. One thing I kind of like about that is if I ever want to, I can kind of take the cap off here and be able to look inside at the pump or at the fuel sender, see if anything is, you know, obviously broken or something like that. But I think that's going to work. And then now that I know where that's going to be, I can kind of drill my holes here. And then now that I know that, I can kind of figure out where my baffling inside there is going to be. So we'll eventually get to cutting the holes here, and then I can figure out where I want to put that baffling in there. But once that baffling is in there, then we can pretty much kind of start welding this fully up here and get the top on. But we don't want to fully weld this on here until we figure all of that out. All right, holes are drilled, so that's all figured out. This is going to be the fuel sender. Here's going to be the pump. Here's going to be the filler. So this would be the front of the tank towards the front of the vehicle. Looking good. I got all my holes drilled to bolt that on. This will get screwed down. This is kind of a modified fuel sender, because this fuel sender is made to have one of those rings that you have to hammer and turn and come out. So I have to make my own little ring. Where did I put it now? Right here. This is actually just made out of plexiglass. You just about use anything, a little chunk of metal. That's just what I had at the time. So I just put, on the last one, I just put silicone in between here, sandwich it down, and then this just squishes down on the fuel sender and then holds it in place, and then the silicone seals it all up. I didn't have any foam gasket or anything like that, so the silicone seemed to hold up just fine. So I'll do that again there. But now we can move on to the inside, because that should be ready to go there. I think what I'm going to do as far as baffling is I'll probably put one piece here, and this isn't the piece that's coming in here, but I'll put a baffle that goes across like this, and then I'll just have one going from here to the edge here, so almost a T. And the back can be fine, you know, the back will be fine. There's nothing really back here, but this will be the fill here. The pump will be kind of enclosed. So on acceleration or anything like that, I'm more worried about acceleration. The pump going dry, if the fuel would all slosh to the back. But if that divider here or that baffle is in here, it shouldn't go anywhere. We'll have that in there, and then the baffle itself will have some holes on the bottom, or some openings on the bottom, maybe some holes in the center of it, just so fuel can go back and forth. Same with the one that's coming here. And then on this side, the level will be right here, and that should clear just fine. This is basically in the middle of it, and this is, I don't know, just about in the middle of it. But I think that'll work. So now I just need to cut a piece that goes across here and here, and I can kind of get that tacked in place here. Once that baffling is in here, I should be able to put everything together and fully weld this thing. So we'll get those pieces cut and see how they fit. All right, I got the inside all the baffling put on the inside and welded up. Not the prettiest welds in the world, but I think this will work. I'm getting ready to kind of weld the top on, but I just wanted to show you what the baffling is. The pump will sit about here, and then the fuel sender here, and then the fill will be right there. So I just got some holes kind of drilled on the bottom and in the middle, kind of in the center here. that go through everything. So it should work pretty good, and fuel will be able to get from one pocket to the next and not have any issues. So one more thing I figured I'd add to the tank too while I was at it was a dash 8 weld-in bung here. So we'll get that welded on. I figured just in case I ever want to drain the tank or just have a different fuel system on it or something, now would be a good time to get this thing welded on versus once it's had fuel in it or gas in it. It's a little harder to weld and get clean. So we'll get this added on here, and then we should be able to pressure test this thing and see if we have any leaks. All right, so this tank doesn't necessarily have to take a lot of pressure to test it. So I'm just using a little air pressure to check for leaks. I got everything kind of bolted on. I got kind of all my ports plugged up best I can. If you have a little bit of leaking going on here, that's not gonna be a big deal. You can go back and fix that. But I'm mainly trying to figure out if my seams are all welded solid, no pinholes. So I'm just putting a slight little bit of air pressure to it. I'm kind of keeping my eye on this. I don't want this thing to blow up and crack everywhere. So, you know, a pound or two of pressure is really all you need because this thing will be vented, so there shouldn't be any air pressure in here when it's running. But yeah, a pound or 2 to 5, maybe something like that. I'm kind of watching to see this thing bulge up a little bit, and then I'll let the air out. But as I do that, I'm just kind of soaping everything down, all my welds. Just some soap and water and watching for air bubbles. And so far, it's looking good. I haven't seen anything yet. Kind of checking where my brackets were welded on and stuff. And it's looking real good, so I think we're going to be ready to install this thing. I'll get it painted first, but then install it. So just looking for real small bubbling, or big bubbles for that matter. Like here, I don't have this sealed yet, but this should leak a little bit there. Maybe you can see the bubbles. I'm getting some bubbles around here. My fuel sender, but maybe you can see that moving up and down a little bit when I let the air out. But yeah, just looking it over real good. And I don't see anything, so. I'm liking that a lot. It means I did something right, I guess. I even checked the bung I just welded in too. Make sure that weld was good, and that one turned out fine. But yeah, not seeing any bubbling. All right, got the tank all painted up now. I actually ended up using some DuPont spray-on bed liner out of the rattle can. I do like this stuff. It holds up pretty good. So we'll see what happens there over time, but I think that'll blend in nice underneath there. Now I should be able to reinstall my fuel pump assembly here. You can see my filler cap here. Had that all taped off, and then my fuel sender. But once I get the pump module back in here, now I can start making up my lines. I'm going to have to redo, well, I shouldn't say redo, but I want to put the wiring for the fuel sender and the pump, kind of one harness over to the side, and then have a Deutsch connector over here, or a weather pack connector or something. Basically, I want to be able to remove this whole tank pretty easily. So we'll get the wiring kind of run over to the side here. I'll also have to make my fuel lines and return lines and stuff like that, the vent coming off the module. I don't know exactly where I'm going to make the connection for them, because I have to put a fuel pump over here somehow, or not a pump, but a fuel filter. And I just don't know where in the frame rail I'm going to have that situated, because I want to be able to access it from underneath. So I'll probably have to get it all assembled and just kind of have some lines hanging off the side here, install it, figure out where exactly I want to cut them, or what length I want them to be, and then take it back down and then make all my lines accordingly. So We'll get the pump back in here, and we'll get some lines and some wiring on it, and we'll test fit it into the vehicle. All right, the tank is ready to go in. I got a little harness made up here now for the sender and the fuel pump. I just got a weather pack on this end and on the other end too, but just wired into a weather pack. And then I also have my little breakout hoses. So I have my dash 6 for the return fuel, my dash 8 for the supply, and then my just a rubber hose for the vent. But this thing should be ready to go. I got it all secured, and we'll get it in the tank next, or up in the truck. Okay, I've got the tank fully mounted now. I got all my lines hooked up. I got a little gas in there, got the battery reconnected. You can see the tank is a lot less noticeable. It just barely kind of hangs down below there, about an inch or two below the bumper from the rear. So I like that look. It's a lot less noticeable. So far, I got about half a tank in there or so, a third of a tank. And no leaks. You know, we tested for leaks before, but basically it's all mounted up in there. Let me grab just a light quick. I shaved my bolts a little bit shorter underneath there. Actually double nutted it just so in case they come loose so it doesn't fall off. But then kind of painted the bolts black just to blend in. But I basically have a disconnect up in front of that corner of the tank, just behind the rear axle. There is where all my attachments or my disconnects are for the fuel lines. I ended up, I don't remember if I showed this or not, but I ended up moving the fuel filter up further, so it's a little bit easier to access. So I got it mounted up here. I just had to kind of cut the line here, and the line used to run all the way to the back, and then that's where the filter was back there. But so I have it up here, a little more accessible, and that's a 10 micron. Otherwise, everything else is kind of up above the tank, up above the axle here. My electrical connection and my fuel lines are up there, and I have it all tied up. So this thing is basically ready to go. You can see the tank's got some room above it. I could have went a little bit higher if I would have trimmed there's a cross member that goes on the bottom of the bed that I had cut for that fuel cell years ago. If I would have trimmed that some more, I could have moved it up even higher. But I like where it's at. Gives me some room on top for everything. But we'll, now that everything's back together, and got fuel and battery all hooked up, we'll double check to make sure we don't have any leaks in our fuel lines or anything like that, and see how this thing runs, see if we can actually build some fuel pressure, see how that pump works. But here you can see there's the fill cover, and you can see the top of the pump right there, and then the level sender is kind of hidden back there. You can't quite see it at this angle, but I think that'll work pretty good. So we'll grab the keys here and see if this thing will fire up. All right, I cycled the key a few times just to get the fuel pressure up there and some fuel up to the engine. So we'll give it a crank here, see how this thing fires up or not. Oh, come on. Definitely way better. You can't hear the fuel pump running. That's absolutely a plus. Man, before when you would fire this thing up, you'd hear the pump on the outside running. It was always quiet at first, but after an hour or two of driving, man, that thing would just kind of scream on the outside. So not being able to hear it at all right now, and just the exhaust note, that's definitely a plus. This thing was a much needed upgrade just for long drives and just keep that pump cooler. Now I'm just going to kind of crawl under it real quick, make sure there's no leaks or anything. All right, just got done checking this thing over. I don't see any fuel leaks. Everything seems to be good. It's just another upgrade for the old Ranger here that I get to cross off the list. So appreciate you guys watching. I think the next video I'm going to be doing on the Ranger here is I got interior upgrades coming. I want to get some new seats for it and kind of change around some things on the inside. So stay tuned for that. But I appreciate you guys watching. Until next time, guys.